somebody else outside. Uh, okay,
We better
I
get
just
started, Shankar.
I'll get started jump straight into it. So, welcome everyone to this insightful panel discussion featuring three esteemed authors: Debbie Howard, Dr. Bagher Fernandez, and Dr. Joel Martin. So, what I'll do is I'm going to talk a bit about each one of the authors. To begin with, Debbie Howard has spent much of her career in Japan using market research to decode the enigmatic Japanese consumer for major multinational companies such as Coca-Cola, Eli Lilly, and Gucci. Along the way, her eyes were opened to the global phenomenon of aging and longevity, and specifically the naturally related challenges of family caregiving. Today, she utilizes her research and strategy skills to address these challenges on two major fronts: enhancing the ecosystem for age tech development in Japan and helping corporations create more caregiver-friendly workplaces. That's a bit on Debbie, and I'll quickly run through Dr. Bagher Fardanesh. Earned his degrees in three fields of management from Colorado University. He was a professor of marketing and management at Johns Hopkins University before joining the University of Maryland School of Business and School of Public Policy. In his professional activities, he served global organizations including GM and Chrysler Corporations. He held the position of commissioner with the state of Maryland. He's multilingual and has authored two books. We'll go on to that. And before that, Dr. Joel P. Martin, founder of Positively Powerful and an esteemed expert in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, transformational leadership development, and women's empowerment, has over 30 years of experience in international speaking, consulting, and coaching. Her forthcoming book, Extraordinary Belonging, a guide for getting past differences for more inclusion, diversity, and equity, adds to her authorship, which includes the popular title, How to Be a Positively Powerful Person. With a global reach spanning countries like Australia, the United Kingdom, and China, Dr. Martin's commitment to fostering inclusive environments has garnered recognition, including appearances on prominent shows like The Today Show and features in esteemed publications like the New York Times and Fortune. Her transformative, positively powerful program has been honored as the International Business Stevie Event of the Year. So, for the fireside chat with authors, I warmly welcome. And I think let's dive into their respective books and explore their unique perspectives on important topics. So I would turn to Debbie Howard and your book, The Caregiving Crisis, and what it costs your business and how to fix it. So, Debbie, would you like to start by telling us a little bit about your background and what led you to author this book?
Sure, Shankar. Thank you so much. I feel like this is such a group of friends, so thank you so much for being here. And I am a market researcher. I'm a Japan expert. I worked in Japan for 35 years full time, and now I go back and forth between Austin, Texas, and Tokyo. And around the time I was 54, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And at the time I was living in Tokyo, running my business there, a consultancy, market research consultancy that I'd been running for 24 years in Japan as a female. I started it in 1989. And I say that because it actually means something to have done that. But you can imagine that, and I'm sure everyone in this room has had a family situation, or maybe you know someone who has, where we as individuals have to stand up and fill the gap that our healthcare systems and other systems are not filling. And my mother was very well prepared. We had talked about her end-of-life plans back when she was 65, 10 years before she was diagnosed with cancer. And we were about as well prepared as you could be, but still it was devastating, and it was really such a difficult experience for all of us, my two sisters and I, emotionally, financially, and even physically. And I was just, lifted from the world of marketing and market research, which is a little bit, it's bit glitzy and glamorous, and not very much thinking about these things that are really, I think, much more important in our world. And it made a big impression on me, and I was completely unprepared, not only to do things like change oxygen tanks and do the medical things, but also the emotional toolkit that would be required to help a loved one to the ends of their life. And so I dug in and put my research skills to work, and I interviewed 200 caregivers from different walks of caregiving. So, for example, cancer caregiving would be one thing, but Alzheimer's and dementia caregiving is a whole other ball game, and often much longer. And I put my research skills to work, and I wrote a book, and it was super therapeutic for me. It took 10 years after my mom died, but I wrote that first book for individuals to help them to be better prepared and to take care of themselves while they were caregiving, and to relaunch their lives when caregiving is done. And then I wrote my second book, The Caregiving Crisis, what it cost your business and what you can do about it, because now I'm healing a little more. I'm getting through the grieving process, which you never get through, but I'm trying to apply what I'm doing to change the world. And I feel that because I work in corporate life, I would be able to maybe leverage in the corporate world by getting companies to be more caregiver friendly workplaces. So I'm 69 now, and that's what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to. And lots of times in our lives, personal situations like that do have transformational aspects and qualities. So I like to think that we should all try to take our experiences and turn them into something better, instead of being bitter. I remember that was a great line, Doug. And that's just a little bit about my background. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. This is very powerful, this very transformative, and the way you're integrated, all that is part of your experience is truly moving. Uh, it's a crucial topic to address. And I would, going by the flow, I would like to have Dr. Bagger Fadnesh and his book on misunderstandings in cross-cultural communications. I mean, communications itself, interpersonal and then cross-cultural communications for global trade. I'm personally so excited by this topic to understand better. So if Dr. Fadnesh, if you can just inspire us on what inspired you to write a book about this topic.
I will be delighted. Thank you so much for that. I started my education at the very early age in the Middle East. Then I continued to be in Switzerland or a different part of Western Europe. And I was there for several years. And for the last year of getting my diploma from high school, I did go to Boulder High School in Colorado. I noticed that one type of behavior that I have would be very pleasant, would be interesting in one culture, is going to be opposite in different cultures. For example, when I came to the high school, I just wanted to be, well presented. I did put tie, like it's not unusual to do it in the Middle East, actually, or in Europe. And every time the professor walked into classroom, I stood up. That was a sign of respect to the professor or to the teacher, but it was perceived differently. They thought that I am just trying to diss their classroom by just standing up. So that was an experience for me on that one. And I had a whole host of different type of misunderstandings in terms of pronunciations and the way that I just try to be cooperative with someone, it was perceived differently. For example, I did for the pronunciation, I read the book, I tried to pronounce it correctly. By the way, at that time, I didn't know any English language, although I'm familiar with French language. So when I did call someone, I said, could I speak to Bob? They said, excuse me, who is Bob? I said, I'd like to speak to Bob. They said, we don't have anybody by this name. And then later on, I noticed that it's not Bob, it's Bob. And so the American folks stretched the words, and I started to learn that. I should not say milk, I should say milk, Papa, and Bob, all of these things. So that was, again, a culture shock. Although many of these steps that I experienced seems to be interesting or even funny, but I gradually noticed that the misunderstanding can spill over into different domains, such as tower control communication with a pilot, or international business negotiations, or interpersonal relationships, that one side try to be as open, as sincere as they can, and it's going to be perceived differently. In fact, the outcome of misunderstandings can go as far as causing tragedies and air disasters. It's something that, if there is a time, I can expand on it a little bit more. So that was really the reason that inspired me to minimize misunderstanding, to talk about the different occasions of misunderstandings and communication pitfalls, but also I decided to find out how we can minimize communication pitfalls among people of different cultures. So that was what it inspired me to write the book.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. I think excellent understanding cultural differences is indeed vital in our interconnected world. And we have Dr. Joel P. Martin and a book, Extraordinary Belonging, Getting Past Differences to Transform Your Business Culture for More Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So, Dr. Martin, how does your book address the challenges faced by marginalized groups in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, if I may?
Excuse me. Thank you. That's a great question. My book is designed to create belonging. And in creating belonging, it's important that we respect, that we honor, and that we cherish. And I use that word intentionally. We cherish the differences of all people. By way of example, when I came onto this into this room, I love that phrase, Debbie. When I came into this room, immediately we began learning about each other, sharing some of our stories, going into our own particular backgrounds. And there was such a family experience. That is the essence of belonging. When marginalized people, and I hesitate to use that word as well, but when human beings who are from diverse and unique cultures, when they are invited, authentically invited, sensitively invited into any group, I suggest there will be bridges crossed, there will be inclusion, and there will be belonging. We need to be intentionally aware that for many hundreds of years, groups of people have not been invited to the party, to the workplace. And now we have an incredible divisive, experiential activity and culture that was very disturbing to me. If you will, I theoretically am a marginalized person, and I choose to be a positively powerful woman, hence the name of my book. I traveled internationally, and before that, I was previously one of the first women to own and operate a full-service advertising agency. So that gave me an insight into cultures, multiculturals, and moving businesses and workforce teams from zero to heroes. Then I stepped into a training program that has transformed my life. Well, through it, I transformed my life for the better. And I discovered transformational leadership there and chose to close my advertising agency and go from 6 figures to 1 figure to be a international transformational leadership trainer. And I love this work. Hence, that is how I got to travel all those different places, changing lives and businesses for the better. Coming into the United States again, in true authenticity, I came in on a plane from my trips to Taiwan, Shenzhen, Kuala Lumpur, into the United States, not knowing that there was a pandemic happening. I walked right into it, blessed be. And what I discovered is that my concept, my path, my passion of transformational leadership and bringing people together was right at the critical point of extraordinary belonging. That's why I wrote this book. My intention is to get us out of the divisiveness into the unity and bring people together. If you look at the cover of my book, and I was asked by a graphic designer, why did you pick this particular look? And it's a dark look with leaves and coming around the title of the book. I did it because we have a choice, my friends. We can either continue in the darkness and encourage the divisiveness and the lack of responsible thinking, or we can take a stand for extraordinary belonging, which is taking the extra and adding it to the ordinary. My book gives practical tips for people managers. Now, that can be anyway from an HR person to a CEO, to a school teacher, to a church group. They all want to know how to do this. So I give templates, I give practices, I share some of my proprietary secrets in that book, because I want people to have all the tools that they need to create a certainty, because I am of the opinion that people want to belong. They want to create extraordinary belonging in their lives, for their families, for others around the world. And I'm a product of that experience. And that is why I wrote the book. I want to put a healing Band-Aid on the divisiveness and bring people together.
Thank you, Dr. Joel. It's so beautiful. And I think what I can do now is probably delve into some specific questions for each of our authors. And maybe I'll begin with Debbie Howard. Debbie, your book outlines the magnitude of the caregiving crisis and its impact on companies. Can you give us, the audience, a glimpse into what companies need to know about this crisis and why it's important for them to be aware of it?
Sure,
Debbie,
Shane.
over to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be here with the other two authors. Your concepts are excellent, and I'm really impressed the way that our 3 books kind of dovetail into each other, which is really amazing.
Absolutely.
With companies, what's really interesting for me about the caregiving crisis, and what a lot of people don't know, is how much money is being leaked out of profit margins and companies because of the caregiving crisis. And I'm talking about family caregiving. So I'm not talking about professional caregivers, although that's a whole other challenge that we have in our world. But because we have a shortage of healthcare workers, and our different systems around the world, family members are having to step in and do more and more heavy duty medical work at home. You may have heard the term about hospital at home and that sort of thing. We are not ready. We're not being trained. Medical professionals are not giving family members the things they need to be able to have to go home and do things like take care of tubes that are still hanging out of bodies, like unbelievable things that I can't even believe and won't go into right now. But that's just on day surgeries, not on long-term caregiving. So there's just so many things to think about. But what companies are losing is something like $68 billion a year right now in the US. And that's growing to something like it's going to double by 2050. So there's a huge amount of money being lost in terms of absenteeism, what we call presenteeism, and also retention, because 1/3 of all caregivers end up leaving their jobs because they cannot cope. And it's just too much responsibility in addition to a full-time job. And I'll just give you some of the metrics on that. So the average number of caregivers in the United States is 53 million people, and the average age is about 52, 53. It tends to skew female, but more and more males are being involved now because there's not enough people to help out. And also more and more young people. So the age is spreading as well. We have, of the 53 million, a full quarter are millennial aged. And that's because, of course, the baby boomers are turning 65, 10,000 people a day. And there's not enough people to fill the gap. And we're talking about a caregiving continuum. So everything from just simply going to a doctor's appointment at the early stages with a parent or a loved one to actually 24/7 care at the end, at home or in a facility. Companies, here's the other big fact that I really want everybody to remember. When we think about companies, 30% of the workforce, every workforce, whether it's large or small, is actually caring for older adults. Okay, I'm not talking about parents of able-bodied children that we saw grow so strong in the pandemic in terms of, let's say, the word caregiver use. That caregiver word has been expanded now to include parents of able-bodied children, but traditionally it referred to parents of children with special needs and adult or older adult needs. So 30% of every workforce is caring for older adults or special needs children. And that is shocking, right? And most of that is older adults. Of the 53 million, 48 million are caring for older adults. So I just want you to imagine what that does to a workforce. I don't know of another segment that's 30% of the workforce. There may be, and if there is, I want to know, because I want to model after what companies are doing for them, because I can't believe, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I can't imagine not helping 30% of my workforce with some serious personal needs. And that's, I guess, what I really want companies to know is that. And the second point is that it's very easy and even cheap to address these needs. It doesn't have to be a really expensive proposition. It's a matter of common sense. It's a matter of training and education. It's a matter of souping up your existing programs that you're already offering to educate and support your employees in mental health and emotional health and that sort of thing. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. You said it. All our books are so interconnected. And I would turn to Dr. Fardanesh and say that your book aims at minimize misunderstandings in cross-cultural communication. So what are some instances of misunderstandings or culture shocks you encountered when you first arrived in the United States?
As I mentioned earlier, it was something as a culture shock to me, to trying to, again, be polite in classroom, and it was perceived differently. And this is something that many of my Chinese students are experiencing with some of the professors, the same scenario as I did go through. And one thing I did also notice is the sense of urgency in helping people among many American folks. In other words, every time I go to someone's office, they just say hello and nothing beyond that. How can I help you? May I help you? This is too strong for me to digest. I just want to get to know the person, or maybe sitting down there and having a coffee and talk about weather, gradually get into may I help you? And because American folks value time extensively. They believe that time equates with money. In some other cultures, however, is being perceived as is the path of life, and no matter what we do with it, it's going to go away. So we better enjoy it. So that was another culture shock to me. The other one was, again, my English was not good at all. The only word that I remember I knew when I entered the United States was good morning. So I thought good morning means hello. Even in the evening, when I saw someone, I would say good morning to you. And that person thought I'm just being funny. They would say, yes, good morning to you. And gradually I learned that that is not really the case. Another thing was, when I did go and say thank you to someone, the answer was, uh-huh. And I tried to get into the dictionary to find out what uh-huh means. I couldn't find out. Then I thought is a brief version of saying you're welcome. So they were the culture shocks. And of course, the culture shocks spill over into nonverbal communications, such as proxemics, punctuality, handshakes, eye contacts, movement of the face, smile. Some books are emphasizing that if you go to another culture, you are not sure what to do, always smile. Smile is something which is universal. That's not necessarily true, because some cultures don't appreciate a smile. When you smile at someone, not only could have a different connotations, but also it shows that you are not really serious in talking about the topic or to do business negotiations. So as you can see in some cultures, when you look at the people that are negotiating, they're not even smiling. So every culture has its own way of conducting business or communicating with each other, and it is critically important for us to become resilient and to understand cultures of different countries to be effective.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fadnesh, for sharing your experiences. And lastly, Dr. Martin, your book emphasizes the importance of addressing uncomfortable conversations and taking decisive action. Could you provide examples of how your book guides readers in navigating these challenging situations?
Yes.
Dr. Joel?
The foundation of the work that I do is to work with a task force or an employee resource group or the executive team, because I believe that having a corporate culture, and Debbie, I'm sure that you understand where I'm coming from on this. Having a corporate culture is more than putting your vision and values up on the wall on a piece of paper or online. It has to be done experientially, I believe, and that's where transformation leadership comes in. So now, how do we have those difficult conversations? One of the practices that I learned from colleagues and have curated, if I might use that word as a designer, to fit my own organizations is called very simply, listen, talk, learn, believe. And I have found that first off, the ground rules of the conversations are very, very important, and I take them very seriously because that drives the context of the content. Some people look at, you know, the whole conversation of ground rules as something that people have to do. I use them as a way to educate as I go through each one, to have people become aligned so that the future, to have the future conversations be built on that. And in fact, one of my clients continues to use the same ground rules in every one of their meetings, because it bears repeating that. Well, I won't go into them now, but in any event, if anybody's interested, buy my book. But I'm just kidding. I can't help it. But in any event, let me continue. Listen, talk, learn, believe. I have found that to be a breakthrough experience for the people in the groups. The foundation of creating a safe space where people know that they will be listened to, and that they can agree to disagree if they choose to, that everyone is to be respected, that what goes in this room is confidential, or in this webinar are confidential. Like, you can share your own personal experiences, but you can't tell someone else's. And that really diminished the gossip, and it diminished the microaggressions and the bias in one of my clients' workforce. When you hold people accountable, and this is key where your senior employees, when you hold people accountable and you make the bottom line a commitment of theirs, you tend to get things done. When people know what is measured is getting done, those really lax kinds of leadership competencies, they're very important, and the weak ones can go out the window. Everyone doesn't need, as in my experience, everyone doesn't need to believe in the core, in the premise of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Is taken on a bit of a cliche, which I insist on breaking up. However, but when you put people together, eyeball to eyeball, and you say, tell me your story, and you're sincere about it, and you let them know that in this room you are safe. And as a facilitator, that's abundantly important for all of us on this call, because we all facilitate something, somewhere, somehow. So they tell their stories, and I will never forget, there was one man for one of my clients, he deals in the hospital universe, Debbie. He was there, and he was in tears, because the lesson that he was listening to was from a Latina family who could not get the time that they needed to talk to the person in the hospital. Oh, it broke his heart. Not literally, of course, but he was so moved that he opened up to believing the cultural differences that there are. Bagar, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for what you added. That they started believing in the cultural differences, those high context, low context differences that we intuit right now in this call. And he wanted to be different because he believed. And when we move the needle through those kinds of experiential processes with leaders who are brilliant facilitators and understand the differences get to be respected, honored, and unique, you will boost the bottom line. Belonging increases the income of an organization, the revenue of an organization. It costs more to train a new employee than it does to keep the ones that you have. And so now when I see the DE&I leaders leaving their workplaces in Hollywood, for example, my daughter's a cinematographer, so we stay in touch with that. When I see them leaving those positions, either intentionally or unintentionally, I'm telling you, it's got to show up somewhere. It's got a ripple effect that will show up somewhere. So that's one of the ways that, well, two ways now that I create safe spaces. Number one, I own the space that I walk in. I have ground rules that reach the heart, the minds, the bottom lines of organizations. And then I put them with love, sometimes tough love, in listen, talk, learn, believe situations where they get to listen. And I've done this for municipalities, for organizations that are 50 years and older, for corporate folks. Anyway, I hope I have answered your question and given some folks some food for thought. Extraordinary belonging is a transformational experience that we all can create. And one church group asked me to come in and talk about CRT, and I did, with the same commitment and passion that I share with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin, for your insights. And I think the discussions are so interconnected, like we know it, exploring important topics from caregiving crisis to cross-cultural communication and diversity and inclusion, and very valuable indeed. So going forward, Debbie, in your book, The Caregiving Crisis, you provide practical steps for companies to mitigate the risks related to caregiver-related costs. Could you share some easy steps that any company, our audience listening, can take to begin addressing these challenges?
Sure, Shankar, thank you so much. My book is like a primer for how companies can become more caregiver-friendly workplaces. And if you just look at, I designed it for companies so that it was easy to digest. So the first 30 pages, if that's all you read, you will get everything you need to know. Obviously, I hope you will dig deeper. I hope many people will dig deeper than that. But it basically outlines how it is not difficult to support your caregiver, your employee caregivers of all ages, of all genders, of all everything. And it cuts across all areas of a company and really gets into that DEI area and sense of belonging as well, Dana. I'm sorry, Dr. Joel. And I think what we see is that ageism, one of the last isms that we allow freely, right? We really freely allow it in our society, like, oh, they're old, they don't know anything, or whatever. That is the basis of not caring about or not putting enough attention and oomph behind supporting caregivers of older adults. It's kind of like they're finished. I mean, we treat caregivers of young babies, new moms, in a completely different manner. That's a happy thing. But of course, when it gets to older adults, that's not a happy thing. It's something that we struggle with, I think, emotionally in our society. So what companies can do is, first of all, be aware. And I think leadership can stand up and accept that 30% of their workforce is actually struggling with these types of issues, and then look at what you're offering through your HR benefits to see how you might be able to support people better. And I outline 5 areas. One is repurposing and augmenting programs that you already have. Most companies already have programs that help with mental health and financial planning for the future and stress management. Why not add 2 or 3 hours of training that is specific to those who are caregiving for older adults or even special needs children's? So that one thing is repurposing and augmenting what you've already got. Doesn't cost anything, hardly anything. Just look at what you've got, add a few things that meet the specific needs of different kinds of caregivers. And then another second step is to look at your employee touch points, because if you don't communicate these benefits, and this is a big problem in many companies already with other kinds of benefits, they're not communicated well. People do not know. You onboard a new employee when they're like overloaded with everything, including trying to impress in a new job, and then how can they remember all of the things that a company offers? So onboarding and coaching through performance appraisal type meetings that happen regularly, different kinds of touch points and communicating those benefits, newsletters, intranets, all kinds of areas. We need to look at those things. And Dr. Joel, I'm really chuckling because you and I both come from advertising and marketing, and this is, I mean, I'm sorry, this is so basic, right? It's like awareness, education, training, touch points. It's like getting the message out there. And this is not rocket science. And then once you get this moving, you might want to survey your employees, God forbid, that you might want to market research your employees to see how many caregivers you might have, what kind of problems they're having, what kinds of benefits they might like. We already know from a big macro view what people want. They want flex time and they want support. They want to be acknowledged for what they're doing and not have to hide the fact that they're taking care of their mom or their dad and or a family member. We also advocate KPIs, key performance indicators. Most companies have no KPIs related to caregiver use of time off, flex time, etc. The Harvard Business Review did a really cool report called The Caring Company that I highly recommend. And it says people aren't counting this money. This $68 billion that's leaking out is not being counted. I'm a little scared to advocate for companies to count it, because I think when they count it, they'll start like whacking benefits related to it and using other kinds of things that aren't good. But I think I have to go there. I have to just go there and try to make people believe that this is, or let me say, encourage people to believe that this is the way forward. I'm going to make them. I'm sorry. Well, I'm encouraging. And then I want companies, the fifth one is to take a leadership role, not only in their own companies and from the top, because this can't be outsourced to your managers, but a leader at the top should take this initiative, push it forward from their own viewpoint, make sure managers get the training they need, and make sure employees understand the benefits they have once they are enhanced. And more than that, after you learn what you're doing and you've made your own workplace more caregiver friendly, I advocate that you take a leadership role in your local communities and you work with community-based organizations like United Way and other nonprofits to spread the information and the knowledge that you've done and gathered as a company. Share that training, help that out in your own community for disadvantaged populations to make sure that this is getting spread out to everyone. So, and then of course, if you can get that far, which I hope everyone will, I want companies to share their stories on the national stage. Here's what we did. And that way other companies will become more interested in trying to do it. So those are my 5 tips. There are 5 downloadable free worksheets on my website. I put those links in the chat. Please download them, use them, spread them around. I did this book. I don't care if I make money on the book. I care about spreading the message. I hopefully will make some money on training and that sort of thing. But I'm kind of like Dr. Joel. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, I'm in it for a different reason now. So I'm really, really interested in any ideas any of you have for collaborating and spreading this message. And I can collaborate back with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie. Those steps sound practical and impactful. So I would move on to Dr. Fardanesh. Your book addresses the importance of minimizing communication pitfalls in cross-cultural settings. Why do you believe this is so important in our world right now?
Of course.
I would also say that it's around, we have another 10 to 12 minutes. So going by that timeline, I have yet to address Dr. Martin, and then we will close for the day. And then we'll hand it over to Gloria and Doug, of course. So please go ahead.
Sure, thank you very much. Before I move forward in response to your question, I would like to say to Dr. Joel and Debbie that there is a author, which is called, his name is Frederick Herzberg. In 1960s, he did create a theory, which is called two-factor theory. At that time, he emphasized the critical role of trust and belonging. And the strange thing is that it's so important, as you pointed out, and it doesn't cost money to do it either. And yet we do not comply with it. And that is the irony, something I wanted to share with you. Going back to your question, is that I did give you a few scenarios of the funny instances of negotiation, of misunderstandings, but sometimes it gets to negotiation breakdowns, and it also could cause air disasters. To just briefly tell you that in cross-cultural negotiations, as I pointed out earlier, is that in some culture, it's saying that you are here to do the business. Don't waste my time, don't waste your time. Let's get down to business and sign the contract, and that would be it. In some other cultures, they believe that I like to know you. That could be a base for doing more business in the future. So let's get used to each other. Let's get to know each other. Let's learn about our cultures, our families, and many other things. So the first person, that party that is very much into efficiency, perceive the other party that they are not really serious. They want to get out of the business. So they're coming with excuses that let me show you the city, let me show you the family, and things like that, or introduce you to my family. And so let me help them not to go through the negotiations. So this is their part. The other part saying, I'm not going to do business with you. The only thing you want from me is money, and without even caring who I am. So these two different perspectives is a pitfall into successful business contract and business negotiations. Going back to some of the remedies or some of the suggestions that I have, is that one of the major problems to cultural misunderstandings has to do with ethnocentrism. My culture is better than yours. What I do is better than what you are doing. If we do with that notion to communicate with people of different cultures, we are heading to communication pitfalls and breakdowns. I would like to give you another example of how a simple misunderstanding could cause disaster. In March 1977, in Canary Islands, close to 600 people got killed in air disaster in the airport when one airplane wanted to become airborne. And I read the whole report because it was interesting to me. But to tell you very briefly is that one of the contributing factors that two jetliners, they collided to each other, KLM and Pan American, was the word okay. The word okay was a contributing factor that these two planes collided to each other. To some people, okay means I did understand what you said. And to some other people, when you say okay, that means I did understand what you said and I comply with it. That small thing was a major contributing factor to the crash in 1977 that caused, again, close to 600 people got killed in the fire. The last thing yes.
I'm sorry, I'm going to, my apology, Bagger, but I have to interrupt for a second if you don't mind. Everything you're saying is amazingly wonderful. But our time zone timeline's getting tight here. Stephanie's had a question for a while. I think we need to, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Again, please. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
We
can go on. And then she needs to also introduce the August lineup. So if you don't mind, and if there's time, we can come back for you to finish. Fair enough?
If I
Oh,
may,
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
relinquish my time to Stephanie. I had already decided to do that as
Okay.
an example of what it takes to belong as you look for who's not speaking and wants to. Stephanie?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All three of you all are great, so great in your topics. And I just want to kind of ask a question. I've worked in healthcare for 20 plus years, really 30. And I remember being on the diversity and inclusion back in 2010. And there was a major issue going on. That's why this diversity inclusion was created. However, my question to you, Dr. Joel, is I work very closely with the C-suite and they knew there was an issue.
Mm.
However, I don't think the buy-in was there at the C level, the C-suite level. So we created this diversity inclusion department. We added people to the team. And so how do you truly get the people to be engaged at the C-suite level? I believe our CEO felt that there was an issue, but because it impacted adversely financially with physicians. However, the issue was even deeper than just the physician level.
Good.
And then the other C-suite owners, they said this is an initiative, but you can tell that they really didn't believe that this is something. How do you truly get them engaged and on board? Do you do a test to see where they are prior, just so you'll know that if they really believe there's an issue? I just would like to hear about that.
Absolutely. Stephanie, may I have your permission to have an offline conversation
Yes.
with you on this?
Absolutely.
I would be honored to assist you with that.
Okay. Yes, I would love that.
Okay, please put your information in chat.
I did.
Okay, thank you so much. We
You're
will
welcome.
talk, all right?
Thank you. And then regards to Debbie, in regards to, well, you know, seniors been my passion for years because of working in healthcare. So I had geriatrics as part of mine. And then that's another question for you, and we could probably talk offline, is the dollar amount is significant. And if we don't provide that as a resource and an option to our employees, I've said over years, it costs us more to retrain people than to provide the support.
Mhm.
And so again, back at the C-level suite, you can have one person, the CEO, say this is an initiative. But again, if everyone on the C-level suite is not on board, truly believe it, because it hasn't impacted them yet. They have the resources to pay for someone else to take care of it. So again, how do you engage those people to get that? Truly own it and believe it. So we can talk offline if you like, so.
I would love to, in fact, I'm going to say the same thing as Dr. Joel said. I would love to talk with you more about that, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And Dr. Joel, I'd love to talk with you as well, because I believe there's a lot we could perhaps do together to raise these issues to top management. And it is a thing, Stephanie, about like, if it doesn't happen to you, you just, you don't think about it. And it's not that you don't care about it or you wouldn't care about it, but you just don't feel it the same way, and you don't have that awareness. And so you may not be putting as many resources behind it as you should.
Well,
So-
maybe three of us can meet, because I think if three of us meet, the questions are gonna probably overlap, so we'd love to do that.
Would love that.
Actually, I think you're going to moderate the next Authors Network event, right? So you may want to just say a bit on that.
I'm sorry, what was the question again? Or
I'm
comment?
saying that I understand that you're going to moderate the next event. And
Yes.
maybe you want to introduce the authors and say a bit so that the event is coming to a close now.
Yes,
And
I will
need to
definitely do that.
hand it
So-
over to Gloria. Sure.
Yes, so I would love for you all to be at our next author event is August 16th. We have two great speakers that are up on deck. That's Elise Krenzel. She's an author. She just wrote a book on Write Like a Rebel. She teaches people how to write and how to get their books out there. Our next speaker will also be Don McGrill. He's the professional product owner book. He wrote the book, The Professional Product Owner. And he's also the VP of Improving, which is one of our members for Global Chamber. And the other thing that's going to be a great surprise, Gloria's working on that, is having a bookstore, securing a bookstore to share how to get a book signing in a bookstore. And so those are coming up on August 16th. We'd love for you all to be there to hear more about it and to support it. And I will be remiss to say I'm also the project manager for Transformational Writers Conference that's happening in December. And Gloria is going to be one of our speakers there in Puerto Rico. So for you all, come. This in December, you have enough time to prepare and to secure your calendar at Transformational Writers Conference.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're
I'll
welcome.
turn to Gloria now to end the conversation today. It has been a great chat, great meeting all of you. And maybe I can give it to Doug.
Yeah,
Okay,
Doug,
Gloria.
give it to Doug.
No, give the floor to Doug. That is. Yeah, please, Gloria, please go ahead.
Okay, is Doug present? Okay, maybe not. Well, I know we're at the top of the next hour and there are more. I'm sorry, did I hear him?
No, he put in the chat that he had to run.
Okay, thank you for that. I missed the very beginning. As you can tell, I'm in Chicago. I'm in the back room of a store using their lighting. I was switching around here a little bit, trying to find the right lighting. But anyway, and I will watch the first quarter of this on the taping because I missed it. But anyway, you were all amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. And I think one of the beauty of this is 2-3 of you are going to get together afterwards and continue the language, continue the conversation. And that's what it's all about. Authors supporting authors. I love it. Thank you everyone for coming. And Shankar, back to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fascinating, interesting, intriguing, very insightful today with conversations with all the authors. But I see a common thread of compassion and empathy in all that we are talking. And communication is the key, whether you're talking one-on-one or cross-cultural, all-inclusive, and we need to be great caregivers. And that's what I take home today. And thanks, Gloria, for giving me the opportunity to facilitate the meeting. And as always, I send my thanks to Doug. I think he had to step on to another meeting, but this is what it is. We continue the conversations going and let the good times roll on. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good way to end.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
great day.
Bye, everybody.